Good evening, everyone. I thought the best way for me to capture this moment when we talk about gun violence is to think about the personal ways in which, as a pastor and as a judge, I've had to do some very extraordinary things when it comes to violence. So in my car, to remind me of why I'm fighting is Anissa Scott. She was an 11-year-old girl who was killed while driving down East Wash, and then she was shot in the head. And I remember having to go into the hospital because sometimes, not everybody gets to see a victim of what gun violence looks like. And I remember the family inviting me into the space and to the hospital room, and I remember looking at her young body with bullet fragments in the back of her head that had exploded into her brain, and her head was swollen as she laid there. And I'm thinking to myself, God, what is this moment about? How do we change this moment? Because this baby will not be able to see the rest of her life because of senseless violence that happened in the street. Most of us are pastors, and we see these deaths and we anticipate death happening in different ways. But gun violence feels different. Gun violence doesn't feel like a child has lived their course, that they've finished their race, that they've done everything that they've come. It seems like it's something had reached into them and stolen something from them that they'll never be able to get back. So the prayer that I always ask is, God, how do we steal time back? How do we as people of faith come together in ways that will actually make impact and change the dynamics of power that seems to be ruling over our entire country? And so this is all I come up with sometimes, is that sometimes in order to meet power, change power, we have to meet power where it is. We can't be afraid as Christians and people of faith to not just have power. We can't be afraid to be courageous in our pulpits, to allow our members to understand the limits and boundaries of what sacrifice and commitment must look like. We can no longer be afraid to preach to the chorus of people. We must also have the courage to preach to people who don't always want to hear what we have to say. And we know full well that they may cost us our job or their tithes, or they may go to another congregation that tickles their ear a little bit better than we used to. But that doesn't mean that we stop preaching, and it doesn't mean that we stop teaching. So my one simple ask of you is, yes, let's press our legislators. That's cool. Let's make sure that they understand our passion. That's good. But I recommend that we start our own PACs. Oh, y'all just say amen on that. And that we fund our own PACs. Because you know what a PAC does? They put money behind people that reflects the values of the community that they want to see in that position, right? And if we don't have no PACs with people that we support, then guess what? All they're going to do is look at us and say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry for you. But they won't change. The only way to change power politically is to put people in positions that reflects the heart and have the courage to do exactly what we need them to do in the season in which we want to do it. Can I get a clap on that? And in our bubble of Dane County, we have wonderful people. We have wonderful people who serve our community. But outside that bubble, we have to keep pushing. And we have to keep funding. And we have to find our brothers and sisters throughout the Wisconsin state, Wisconsinites everywhere, and pull them together and say, it is not just important for us to pray together. It is now important for us to fight together. And while all these gray hairs are beautiful, before y'all ride into the sunset, y'all need to give us power to make the change we need. Because they depend on you to be silent and be apathetic, but you need to empower us with the ability to say, this is the time. Because nobody should have to say goodbye to their baby like this. Nobody should have to say, planning on summer vacations, have to turn it into planning funeral. In my tradition, Jesus taught us a very special way. When the disciples got mad and were trying to keep the disciples and the families and the children away from them, Jesus told the disciples, hey, stop that right now! And he grabbed their kids, and he held them in his arms. And he put his hand on them and he blessed them. I told my church last Sunday, I said, this is the only place I've read in the Gospels where Jesus took somebody in his arms and held them It was the children that people had denied access to. If Jesus grabbed them in his arms, I tell y'all, that's what we got to do too. God bless you. God bless you.